welcome to Groomed.Connect. You're connecting today with a new guy. We have Steve Hayes. We had him as a guest last week, but popular demand required us to bring him on full time.
It was cool for my mom to call.
Yeah,
really
yeah.
Cool.
It was your ex-girlfriend, actually. No, I'm just kidding. Yeah, no. So we're gonna have Steve on a regular basis. We really enjoy having him on and some of his insights, and the pizza box thing just threw us over the moon. So we enjoyed that. So Steve, how you doing today, buddy?
I'm doing good, man. A little tired today. My son was in town. His band played at this little pub in Ballard, which is the vibe was so cool. Brick walls everywhere. And there was 3 bands that came on. His band was the last band, and I love watching them play. Man, they just
He's a
tore
drummer,
it up.
right?
We got home late last night. What's that?
Oh yeah, is he a drummer?
Yeah, he's a drummer. All 3 of my boys are drummers. It's a loud house. It was a loud house.
Well, as a guitar,
So I'm a little tired. How about you guys? How you guys feeling today? How you feeling, Brian?
feeling pretty good. Pretty good. As a guitar player, I won't hold the fact that your sons are drummers against you, but now I'm feeling
Well, they had some good guitar players in the band.
I wish I had some kind of musical talent like that. My sister does. It skipped me.
Pick your nose pretty well, don't you?
I do. I'm good nose picker. It sounds good too. Let me hear it.
Wow.
All right. Hey, well, last week we kind of kicked around the whole pizza box thing. I love that analogy, Steve, of just that idea that, Christianity comes in a box. It has to, it's got to be delivered in some way, but we've turned around and worshiped the box. We worship delivery instead of the actual pizza, obviously God, Jesus. And so awesome stuff. Wanted to, we did get some feedback from people saying, what does a good church look like? What is it? And we were kind of talking off the air a little bit about just the whole conformity thing and how it shouldn't be a place where you come in and take a number and you just, fit in your place, but it should be a place for you to be able to explore, almost like an orchestra. You come in and you know how to play this part, speaking of musical instruments, but you have a part to play, but you're part of an orchestra, right. but you have agency. You have an individual person that that you are an individual person, and that conductor is just making those parts come together. A pastor should do that, make the parts come together, not tell the parts what to play, what instrument to play, but just let that person be who they are. Kind of along those lines. What do you think of that, Brian?
Yeah, I think that conformity is a big issue with a lot of larger churches. And I would say that if you're in a church and you feel pressure to conform to a certain thing, right, that maybe they've lost sight of their mission. If you're in a church where you're free to be yourself, that's probably a good place to be. I know that, myself, for the 30 years I was at our old church, Mike, I felt 30 plus years. I felt oftentimes a lot of pressure to conform, especially if you stepped into a position where you really wanted to contribute. They would call it leadership, and I hate that they use that word because I just hate it. But if you stepped in a position where you wanted to contribute, then all of a sudden there was this pressure to do it just and so a certain way. And that's really, we're created as individuals, right? We're all unique. We all bring something different to the table. Some of us are more unique than others, but that's another conversation. And
Steve Hayes.
He looks at me when he says that.
Yeah, but that's really the value of a community, right? Is nobody is the same. Everybody brings something to the table. We're not painting with, we're not coloring with the 10 crayon box, right? We got the 128 crayon box.
Right. Love that box.
Right.
Love that box. Steve, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, going with your whole analogy there and combining with what Brian said, if a conductor came in and told everyone to play the trombone or trained everyone to play the trombone, an orchestra isn't just trombone players. It's not just trumpet players. It's not just violin players. And there are, they do have chamber, where they have mostly violins, but to get the full sound, the full symphony effect, you have to have a flute player, you have to have a trumpet player, you have to have a timpani player. My sons actually played in an orchestra here. They had a youth orchestra in the whole area here, and my sons were they're not symphony people, so they're drummers, right? But they asked them to come in and play a lot of the percussion, and they didn't quite hit it off my sons didn't quite fit in with a lot of the violin players and stuff like that. They're, in a lot of ways, not to stereotype too much, but they're different personalities. But when it came to the symphony, they all played their role. They played their part. They stuck to their part. They didn't try to outshine anybody else. And I think the problem with religion is when religion gets to the point where you can't allow the trombone player to be the trombone player because he's not a violin player. And my whole life, I've been told to be a violin player. And my whole life, I've been a drummer. All three of my boys are drummers, actually. But I'm just talking symbolically there. I don't quite fit the mold, but I don't think any of us fits the mold. I think God made us all unique. There's a statement I actually have it on my Facebook right now, but it says, why try to blend in when God made you to stand out? And we're trying to be normal, but there is no normal because we're all unique.
Yeah, that conformity issue is huge because it does that. It turns everybody into a trombone player. And then, then you feel guilty if you have any kind of, desire to be something else or, kind of go, put it into practical terms. There's people in church that have talents and abilities. And sometimes those talents and abilities get squashed because there's jealousy, there's jealousy from the pastors, there's jealousy from other people in the ministry. And you can't really truly be yourself, or
right.
Maybe you're exploring some things in your faith as far as, your worldview, right? You've maybe have a different worldview. I grew up in Massachusetts, so we got, the Kennedys and left wing stuff. My mother would literally drive us to the compound in Hyannis where the Kennedys, this is not a joke, drive us there and park out in front of their house. We were parked out in front of the Kennedy's house, and she would cry and go, "That's Johnny's hot room right there." It was bizarre. And we were just trying to go to the beach, right? We had our floaties on ready to go. But it was like anyways, I grew up like that. And, you get that in your, in your DNA, kind of your, political DNA. And so working that stuff out, dealing with that, can you do that? Is there room for that? Is there any space to kind of have your own thoughts in churches? Sometimes not.
Right. And an issue I think that we have with that too is the fact that it's a church. And so that represents God to us. So, and oftentimes leaders in church they've got that advantage of that, right? I remember, I was a nerd. I wasn't very good in sports. And no one ever wanted me on their team. But the moment I became a pastor, oh man, I was batting cleanup and playing shortstop, even though I told the guy I wouldn't go on the field. I said, I'm not batting cleanup. I remember the first time no one ever listened to me when I was playing basketball. And the one time now I became a pastor, and all of a sudden, I missed a shot and I was like, oh, and they stopped the whole game. Stop, foul. I'm like, I didn't call a foul because the pastor, in other words, the point I'm trying to make without going any longer to get into it. If I'm working like Brian said, if I'm working in a company, if I'm a plumber, right, and my boss tries to control me, I don't get bitter against porcelain. I don't say I'm never going to go in the shower again. I'm never going to use my toilet because my boss was a jerk, right? But if your quote unquote boss is a pastor who's trying to get you to act this way because the Bible says this way, and you can make the Bible say about whatever you want. Any book that has thousands of sentences in it, you can pull sentences here and there, and right. The problem is if we get hurt by a pastor, then we can tend to, this really breaks my heart, but we tend to think that God feels that way about us. And I think a lot of time God's on the sidelines going, hey, stop putting words in my mouth. Ask me what I said about you, not that guy right there. So if we get poor leadership in a spiritual environment, a church environment, a ministry environment, it's real easy to what I want to say, put that off on God and say that that's God when it isn't God. It's man being a poor reflection of who God is.
Yeah. Let me react to a couple of things you said. I think you're right. We tend to conflate church and God. And I think in a good church that they would discourage that because, church is just a vehicle. You can go to
100%. It's
church,
the
you can't go to
box.
church. It's the box. It's the pizza box. It's like, my wife and I are going to Colorado again next week, and my vacation isn't about the car and being in the car and driving.
Right. Right.
It's about where I'm going, and um, and so to conflate that the church or the people who run it with God in any weird way, I think is a number one mistake. I think the other thing is that, you talked about this a little bit, the ability to grow and to ask questions. You think about when you raise your kids, you want your kids to be able to ask questions. You want them to, even question you, ask you why, help me understand why this is this way or why you're doing this and that kind of a thing. And, I know that as I grew in my faith, I asked a lot of questions, and that was,
Right.
I found out really quick that wasn't necessarily the most popular thing to do. So
Right.
maybe if we're talking about a healthy church, place where you can ask questions,
Yeah.
I think is, you know, that's part of growing. I mean, that if you really go back and read the New Testament, and you look at Jesus and you think about the rabbinical tradition, it was all about asking questions.
Right.
Right.
You hear a lot of people, they'll say, I asked my pastor a question and he freaked out, or, like basically started treating me different after that, and it's really what it comes down to is they don't want the questions asked. I mean, it's almost an offense to them. And I would say, if you're looking for a church and your pastor's offended that you're asking questions, get out of there.
Right.
Get out of there. Because, even if I'm a pastor and I don't know the answer to the question, I'm not offended that you asked it. I just have to go find out what the answer is, or maybe I just look at you and say, I don't know,
Yeah.
But if I'm
Or
offended that you asked it,
maybe let's talk about that. Let's figure it out together.
right.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. But they don't do that. A lot of them, they just get offended that you even asked. And because you're supposed to be, you're supposed to know, you're supposed to just trust me, we're going to preach on that, in November. So just
Well, I
hang
think
in
there's a
there
lot
and,
of pressure. I agree. I think there's a lot of pressure put on us as a pastor to have to know it all. In other words, we're getting paid by everyone in the congregation to do everything, right? Why am I paying you for? And so instead of coming out and saying, I don't know, Brian, I love how you said that. I mean, you takes all the pressure off to, I don't know, let's figure it out. What do you guys think? But I think sometimes we might get afraid that if I do that, then they don't see my need to pay me. I might lose my salary or whatever the case may be.
or your little ego might get bruised,
Right.
and
Or
that's
you'll
usually what it is.
or you'll lose authority, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I remember a pastor when Rob Bell's book Love Wins came out, which if you've ever read that book, it's really just a lot of questions. It's not a lot of answers, just a lot of questions. And our favorite redheaded pastor called me one day and asked me what I thought about the book. And I mean, I had a pretty positive reaction to the book when I finally read it. I thought, these are good questions that people should ask, whether you
Right.
agree with where Rob Bell's coming from or not, whether you like him or not. And I'm not going to land on either side of that right now, but they're good questions to ask. And I got the impression after that call that, essentially, well, I think, this book is, do we have to worry about this book? Is it dangerous because
Right.
it's asking questions and it's asking these questions? And I think I walked away from that conversation. I think that's when I had this thought. It's like, look, if my faith rises and falls on what my pastor thinks about these kinds of issues, then I've got a pretty weak faith because I'm not leaning on the right thing, right?
Right.
What I said at the end of that is I have confidence in God's ability to lead the human heart over any man's.
Right. It's the whole, we're teaching you what to think versus teaching you how to think.
Exactly.
And you think of, the Socratic method that came from Socrates, right? And he was hated. He was like a rebel for coming and answering questions by asking questions. The Socratic method was all about getting to that point by asking questions. And I can't remember if he was killed because of his method, but there was people that followed in that footsteps. You started asking questions, man. People, they don't like that. And I don't know, is that a pride thing? Is it we as leaders have to know? I mean, why? I've always was concerned about, I was always interested in that fact that who cares if Socrates answers questions by asking questions, but it riled people up, and I'm not sure why.
Yeah. Well, and back then, especially like I'll go back to just to when we were in church in the 80s and 90s, you didn't have the access to the information you have now. I was just doing a tutorial the other day just for stuff I'm doing with my company on AI, right? And so I was watching this tutorial, and this guy he was on tour, he was like on vacation somewhere, and he was standing at this in this square with a couple of buildings, and he told the AI program he was using, I think it was Chat GP, one of them. Maybe it was Claude. I don't know. It was he asked it. He said, "Hey, I'm standing in this square, and these two buildings look really weird to me. What are they?" And the thing knew where he was standing, and then described the buildings, when they were built, why they were built, what was going on, and it was crazy. I'm just using that as in context of it's not too far off, and maybe it's already here that people can go sitting there in church, listen to this pastor get up and talk about something, and he's pulling it out of his ass, right? He's just maybe doesn't know what he's talking about, and this all they can do is all they have to do is go in their program, their AI program, and go, this pastor just said blah blah blah. Paul was this. Is this true? And then it's going to tell you because that's how what's happening with AI now. They're going to put all the Bible and all the stuff into that, and it's going to spit out what you know. I'm saying that because you can't BS anymore. I mean, a lot of those times, like I remember listening to pastors going, I don't know if that's true, but there's no really way for me to go find out unless I grab my, lexicon and looked up the
Right.
Greek words and all that mess. But now you don't have to do that. You just go, boom, and it'll tell you. And so these guys better get their acts
Well, I had a
together.
pastor friend of mine that was just laboring on trying to come up with what he was going to talk about Sunday. And he was just striving, trying to figure out his sermon, right? His speech that he's going to give on that Sunday morning. And finally, he just felt like God said to him, he says, why are you talking about me? Why are you studying to talk about? Why don't you just introduce him to me? And I think that we have forgotten our role as leaders in spiritual situations. We're not here to give them all the answers. We're not the Bible answer man. We're here just to teach them about love. We're here just to show them who Jesus is, who God is. We're here to really, the word pastor actually does mean to be a shepherd. We're here to help people. We don't have to know all the answers, but it's our Sunday mornings have turned into my pastor. Well, he feeds me. I go in because he knows the word. We preach the word. And when people start talking like that, I back off because I know what's coming next, right? That whole Pharisee kind of, the Pharisees knew the word too, right? I don't think it's our role to try to build an institution, to build a university. Our goal is to gather everyone together and just say, what's God saying? What's God doing? What are you guys thinking? Is anyone angry at God today? Is anyone excited about God today? Talk to me. But we've turned it into, I've got to do the preaching. Or in fact, we don't even learn how to be pastors. We don't learn how to be shepherds. We don't learn how to be caregivers as much as we learn how to be preachers, right? And because it's all about Sunday morning now. It's not about what people do all week long. It's about getting my Sunday morning service ready. And there's a lot of pressure on pastors to have to do that. I talk to a lot of pastors that don't like it. But that whole concept of, wait a minute, that's not the role I have to do. I don't have to know all the answers. Google knows all the answers, right? Chat GPT can know the answers I need to find. My goal, I need a relationship. I want a friendship. I want someone to tell me I'm going to be okay. I want someone to say, I like you for who you are. You play trombone, man. Blow that trombone, right?
Yeah. And I want somebody who's going to walk through my stuff.
There you go.
Right.
There you go.
And not necessarily,
But try to clean it up. Good job, Brian.
Yeah. Not necessarily somebody's going to give me answers or give me 3 points on how to get out of this or, examine my life and find out if I'm being obedient, whatever that means in this area, the other area. I want someone to walk with me. I need a friend. I need a community that is going to support and be with me. I'm not looking for facts. I'm not looking for answers.
100%.
Yeah. I want someone to just let me just look at you and go, hey, I'm struggling today, or I'm angry right now at God. I don't understand this, and not get chastised, not get, hit over there with the Bible. Just let me talk. Just let me just process this stuff out. Yeah. God's always here. And that's the thing is we talk about God being used, us being used as, as God's mouthpiece, or at times, God uses us to say things, but God's talking, right? So it's God talking. So you're just one voice out of a crowd that you might like. You guys both are good friends of mine, and you both have said things to me that have been life changing. And but it's not. I don't go Brian said or Steve said. I say, well, God was talking to me through Brian, through Steve.
Right.
I have a friend Lori Arms. I love her and her husband Daryl, and they'll say stuff to me, and it means the world to me. But they're not God. They're not my source, right? My wife says things sometimes to me. Believe me, she's right over there. Um, but she's not my source. God is. He's always talking, but he talks through different avenues in different ways. And so
I think we all want to be seen.
To put a pastor on that level is just idolatry.
Yes.
It's idolatry. It really is, in my opinion.
Good word. That's a good word.
I think we all want to be seen, right? Like you said, I don't need the answer. I don't need all this information. I need to be loved. I need to walk in and I need someone to see me. But if all of our attention goes to a pulpit and it goes to a worship leader, goes to a pastor, then how can anyone see anybody else? Yeah. So we have our 3-minute greeting time. Turn on greeting. That's about the closest we get to doing what we're supposed to be doing, which is seeing each other, hearing each other, feeling each other's pain, right, rejoicing in each other's excitement. Now that takes a lot of the pressure off, in my opinion. And that's really.
I don't know if I told you guys this, either one of you, but when before I went to Bellevue Christian Center, some charismatic Catholics picked me up thumbing one time. And long story short is I ended up going to this meeting on Tuesday nights because they had donuts. That's the only reason I went. And I went, there was these people that most of those people were over 70. I mean, honestly. And they had no idea what they were doing, but they were charismatic Catholics. So they were Catholics. It was in the Catholic Church. It was the basement of Sacred Heart Church is where I went. And they would gather around 40 people, and they had nobody preached. They sang worship, and then they just put the microphone in the middle of the thing and then just let people go. And it was crazy. I'll just be honest. There was some crazy stuff. There was some people that would get up there and they were like, they would prophesy, and it was like, whoa, you're either high or you're something, but it was crazy. But then there was a genuine move of God at times. Like people were really talking about Jesus and what he was doing in their lives. It was just testimony after testimony. And some of it, again, was nuts, but some of it was really right on. But that's what it's about. It's about people coming together. I loved it because these guys weren't churched enough in the evangelical way of, the box church to put a pastor up there to, do announcements. It was all pulling they were pulling it out of their butts. They were like just winging it. Right. But I loved it. I went back every week. I was this punk kid smoking weed, having sex with my girlfriend, just out of control. But I went every Tuesday night. I got off work. I had a job on Tuesday nights, but I switched my hours so I could be there. And I worked on Wednesdays instead of Tuesdays. And I went because it was, and again, it wasn't formal. It was just, they put a microphone in the middle and said, go. And it was crazy. And I loved it. I felt that was more like church than anything I've ever been around.
Well, that's interesting because in Easter of 2020, back in the dark times, Cheryl and I joined a book study out of a church in St. Joe. I probably told this on the podcast before, and a subset of that group is still together today. We meet probably every other week, and I mean it's a faith group. And more than anything, that has been our most fruitful faith community. We're not going to a building, we're getting on Zoom. I mean, we've met, we've all gotten together, a couple times in person, but that has been nourishing for us. It's filled that role. Now, we went and found a church because we felt like we needed some like real life 3-dimensional in-person community. But I would tell you that group has, more than anything, probably in my life, served my spiritual growth the way that I, in retrospect, had wished church had.
Wow.
And so I guess my point saying there is that, back to the pizza box, back to the building being conflated with God. Look, there's a lot of, and to your point, Mike, with everything that's online, there's a lot of ways to find that community and to find, people who will encourage you, which is really, I think, primarily in the New Testament, what we're called to do is encourage one another, love one another.
And that actually brings me to the question I want to ask the audience, because Brian and I, we haven't ran this by you yet, but we want to, we do a thing called Thursday night. Well, on Thursday nights, we do a thing called Groomed in 10, where we kind of wrap up or answer any questions or kind of expound on what we did the week before. And it's been good. We've got about 25, 30 people that watch it. And if you're one of those that watch it, thank you. But we were kind of kicking around the idea of maybe doing something what you just said, Brian, like doing a Zoom community from, we have 127, I think, followers. I don't know if you all watch this, but we would love to gather with you. I mean, and no one's going to preach or, it's the equivalent of putting the microphone up and saying, hey, you got, 3 or 4 minutes to just talk to us about you. What's going on? How can we support you? I'm really interested in that. I'd like to know what you think in the comments below. If you could let us know if that's something that would interest you. It doesn't commit you. If you obviously we're not going to commit you, come to your house and you said you were going to be on our podcast. Or our Zoom church. That's what we should call it. Zoom church. Anyways, Thursday nights. If you would be interested in that, leave some comments, or you can email us, whatever. But we would love to, and we're not going to record it and put it on. It's not going to be anything that you're going to end up, getting embarrassed. It won't be recorded. It's just something that we can get together and hang out. If you're interested in that, leave the comments below. Let us know what you think, because we would love to do that with some of you.
And I promise I won't let you let either one of these knuckleheads try to sell you their books or, any of that nonsense.
$9.95. You can be a millionaire and never pay tax. Steve, how's the book coming along?
Man, my brain is just full. You guys have been saying so much stuff I don't even know. So I'm trying to use wisdom here and go, what should I say? What should I talk about? The book has come along good, but I want to talk about some of the things that you talked about. I mean,
hit it.
What you said, this happens over and over again. What happens are there people that attend a church, don't attend a church. They just believe that there's something more out there. So they get together and say, well, let's just get together. Let's not have any rules. Let's not have any format. Let's just get together and see where it goes. And God blesses that, because when 2 or 3 are gathered together in my name, see, that means with the purpose of, God, what do you want to do today? Where do you want to go? What's up? How are you guys feeling today? Life sucks today or whatever, but they get together with the sole purpose of they want to find out what God is thinking or what God is feeling about them or whatever. And what happens is they begin to get blessed. They get blessed. It begins to grow. More people want to be a part of that. And then what happens is what's the very next step? I bet you both know the very next step, right?
Yeah. Who's in charge? Who's the leader?
Yeah. Right. Who's going to be the leader? And then what else do we have?
Offering.
Let's get a good building.
That's a good story. My buddy was, anyway, what happens next is, before I forget this train of thought, what happens next is we got to get a building. We got to organize this, and we've got to, and that's when really it starts to die. For 300 years, there was no word called church. It was called ecclesia, right? When Constantine decided, and that's a whole nother story, but when Constantine comes on the scene and says, hey, this is going to be the official, it's going to be religion of my people, and we're going to organize it. And they put it in buildings, they put it in structures, they put it in formats. And that at that point, it started to die once they started to organize the thing. But the funny story, my friend had another friend, he called him Crazy Dave. And they hung out together all the time, right? And one day, Crazy Dave comes up to my friend and he says, hey, I was wondering if you he was him-hawing around. Like, I was wondering if you kind of like want to get together, like maybe we can get together maybe once a week or something like that. We could just hang out and, we could just talk about whatever. We could just, and my buddy's like, yeah, we hang out all the time. I mean, what are you talking about? I have no problem with that. I'd love to hang out. Really? Would you like to do that? How about if we did it on Saturday mornings at like 10? My buddy's like, hang out whenever, but sure, if you want. This is really strange for Super Dave to be acting this way. When they got together on Saturday morning, Super Dave hands my buddy this piece of paper. He says, just read those. And they were the announcements for the church on Sunday. And there's only 2 of them in the room. And he's like, here, you read the announcements. In other words, they were hanging out all the time. Acts 2, whatever it was, they loved to hang out with each other. They wanted to hang out with each other. It wasn't some organized, we talked about this last time we got together, but my buddy wanted to hang out with Dave all the time, but all of a sudden Dave wanted to organize the thing. And that's what happens is when we get together, we miss out on, because all of a sudden now we limit God to showing up on a Sunday morning service, on a Bible club, on a, whatever the case may be, Bible study. We limit God to those moments instead of, wait a minute, what if we saw every moment as an opportunity to include God, as an opportunity to what God you are doing and playing as well as praying, all the type stuff. But I think there have been so many that have done exactly what you said. And I've got stories myself. I won't go into them, but of people that have gotten together and but then they decided to over-organize. That's when it starts to become an institution, in my opinion, is when we start to organize. My family's organized, but it's a very loose. We don't say, well, we meet at 5:00 and we're going to supper on. I mean, when our family has their rules, but no one sits around and talks about the rules. When we get together for supper, we don't say, okay, Caleb, it's your turn now to bring the thought for the day. We don't do that. We just hang out with each other, and we've made this thing that's supposed to be a common,
organic,
easy, natural hangout thing, and we've turned it into a religion. And it's, I like the other version. I just like the other version. I go to church. If I go to church, I go to church because I'm looking for that. I'm looking to hang out afterwards. I'm looking to go to the restaurant afterwards. I'm looking to go early so we can just hang out and talk. Once everything gets organized and we go through things, fine, let's go through things, but can we hang out afterwards? And I think that's what Jesus modeled by coming out of heaven down to earth. Can we just hang out?
Yeah, he didn't set up a church. He just walked around the earth with his buddies.
Yeah.
But didn't Paul say that to go out and build ye a mega church?
Yes.
I think he did that. That was the book of Hesitations.
Yeah. I mean, Steve, what you were describing, and you referenced it, is that was the model coming out of the gate, right? That was the model. And it wasn't until somebody in power stepped in, Constantine, that, the whole thing went south. And I think one of the things maybe that if you're watching this today, you could get permission to think outside the pizza box about, what your spiritual community might look like. So,
you don't have to find a pizza box to find pizza. It doesn't matter to me what the pizza box comes in. I just want the pizza, and I don't care how God comes to me. I want God. I don't want to wait. I don't want to wait till next week before I can eat pizza again. I want to eat pizza right now, right? Same is true with God. I don't want to wait till Sunday. I can't wait till Sunday morning for God to show up in my life. No, I like him too much. I mean, I love God too much to wait until my Bible study, to my devotional time tomorrow morning. I want him just to be with me right now. And so I invite him in my regular, Brian, I agree 100%.
You guys remember that song? I wish I missed my time with you, those moments together. I need to be with you. I sing that to my wife all the time. All right. So listen, after the Pizza Box podcast last week, a buddy of mine sent me a video, and it's going to be real primitive. I'm going to try to put this up in post-production if I can get it. But if not, I'm going to play it here. This is Orchard Road Christian Center. Steve, I had you speak there a couple times, I think, in Denver. It was my old church. They sold it. They sold it to some company, and they was supposed to scrape it and then put up a new, like a office building or something. But it's been vandalized, and this church was pristine. I mean, they kept this place like in immaculate condition. And I just this is like a minute video, but it kind of gives you an idea of what happened to it. I don't know if you can see that.
Pull it back a little bit. There you go.
Oh, wow.
So that's I don't know. They're walking on it's all trashed and there's graffiti all over it. I mean, this place was beautiful. That's the sanctuary. That's the youth section, actually. We should sit up there.
I like it.
Yeah.
Right.
Maybe they should do church there now the way it is. There's a concept. That's the gym. But it was just interesting because that was the box, right? And they put a lot of money into that box, and they put a lot of time into that box. And when we were talking about that last week, and here it is, the box is trashed, right? But God's not. And people were commenting, they were saying, oh, that's a shame. And they were saying all this stuff like, God, used, you spoke to me in that building. No, but God spoke to you. Like that's
Right,
that's
right.
it's not the
Who cares?
building.
Right, right.
Who cares?
In a lot of ways, it reminds me of like, when you get the really nice birthday present or the really cool Christmas present that is just wrapped ornately, you get excited because if it's wrapped really well, if they put the time and effort into wrapping that present like that, I can't wait to open that thing up. In fact, I feel guilty sometimes opening it up. Like you try to open up all nice and careful, whatever, but it looks gorgeous. Then you open up, there's a gummy bear inside. I mean, you want to talk about something that'll make you angry, right?
Right.
And we put so much into the box. We put so much into the building. We put so much into hyping this thing up, and then you open it up and you're like, that's what it is.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, hey, listen, this has been interesting. I want to reiterate again, we need to, if you want to be part of this Thursday night gathering, I mean, again, if it's just a few of us, we'll do it. But instead of doing the Thursday night Groomed in 10, we kind of want to do a fellowship group of just us together, maybe, possibly, if that's something
And
that
you sang a song that started to traumatize me. Then you said those two words, and now I'm full on traumatized. I'm gonna have to.
I miss my time with you. Let's fellowship, brother. Let's roll up a fatty full of fellowship and fun.
Roll. Did you say roll the fatty with fellowship and
That's
fun?
from Will Ferrell. That's a Saturday Night Live skit I absolutely love. All right, you guys. Hey, good seeing you, Steve. It's good having you on. We love having
roll
you.
the fatty.
You're a good man. Roll up your own fatty. I'm not talking about your wife.
Fun.
All right.
We'll be burning one.
Bad, so I'm going to edit that out. All right. See you guys.
I'm lit up, man.
Have a good one,
Easter
you
is on
guys.
420 this year.
Shut up. All right. Bye.